Good evening again. We are now here for our third and final panel discussion as we seek to deal with to the problem of chaplaincy, to address the problem that is of chaplaincy with Centennial law enforcement at Spanish River site. And again, this panel is made up of law enforcement, military, and educator, and we're seeking to come at this from a non-conventional way in order to try and hear the voices of those who otherwise would not be heard, because if we just hear what the brass is saying. So our intentions are to allow the brass to hear what the laity or those that are not in the capacity that those who exercise oversight at the SRS would be able to do. So as we do this, as we continue now with our third panel discussion, the subject that we'll be speaking from and dealing with is how important should crisis intervention be concerning chaplaincy and its relationship to both law enforcement and the public. How important should crisis intervention be concerning chaplaincy and its relationship to both law enforcement and the public? Just to throw out a little history nugget concerning crisis intervention. It is something that I think needs to go even beyond chaplaincy. I think it's something that needs to be in the individual churches, because what it allows is for the victims to be able to tell their story, because the healing is in them being able to tell their story. And then those of us that are trained as crisis interventionists, our job is just to be a listening ear, to hear them as they tell their story. And we try to get them to tell their story as much and as many times as they feel comfortable doing it, because through the telling of the retelling of their story, then there's healing. So as we address this topic, this subject, in your own words, what is crisis intervention? In your words, what is crisis intervention?
Well, it has to be more than just, I think it's threefold. It's more assessment of what's taking place, an analysis of what needs to be done, and then coming up with a way to implement those corrective measures that will address whatever's needed.
And ours was always right now, in the situation, even while smoke is still going and everything, I need to be able to get you to focus. No matter what it is you just saw, we say that cadence, play the inside with a bullet in his head. Well, I need to get your mind, you need to get back on what we're doing here. We need to do that right now.
Call it down and dirty.
Yeah, exactly.
Redirect.
Gotta get it. We ain't got time. You be doing all that. You ain't gonna say it to them like this. We need back on what we're doing. So it'll be that immediate help, or that immediate comfort, whatever it is that's needed at that moment while we're in the heat. For lack of a better term, while we're in the heat of battle. We need to solve this right now. Don't let you go off the deep end right now.
Help a person deal with a overwhelming situation, helping them focus basically. To help them focus and get back on task.
Okay, good. All right. In a crisis, should open-ended questions be asked of the victims? If so, what kind?
It depends on the situation a lot of times. Maybe if it was a death situation or whatever, how do you meet your husband? How do you all meet? You just got to tell that story, and the next thing you ask a no question. How did we tell it? Let them kind of give you some stuff that, you married him, like, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, you should have some open-ended, especially if you want them to tell the story, you want them to get something out there.
Because, I'm sorry.
But I think prices and something's wrong. I think whatever those questions are, isn't it? The first question shouldn't be blunt. You want, I think it needs to be scaffolded. You know, you want to start here so that you can get them here. But if you got a person coming to you on 10, okay, why are you acting this way is not the question you want to ask.
Yeah, they can probably set me on off.
Right.
I remember when one of my aunts died, and I made it to the story before, and my wife called me, they were all there, she died. And I was behind, so I went over there. When I got there, all I heard was laughter. Must not be the right room. And I go in there, and the chaplain was in there. But he said, tell me a funny story. And everybody was in there telling stories about how slow she was and if he was going so. I mean, they were just laughing.
That's our redirect.
I was like,
I tell you one thing that threw us off. We went to the hospital, got there, preachers lined up around the wall, sitting in there. And we were on a death watch is what it was. And the lady kind of held up in the bed, she said, y'all can go home, I ain't going nowhere tonight. And he didn't. Quite a number of days. But yeah, the idea is to keep them talking and talking about things and I know one of the things that we were trained in, if it was a death call, we went to, you know, where you hear on how you feel, and then they just start to talk and they're talking about themselves and really how they feel and things of this nature. You're not, you know, seeking to if there's something you can do, you do it, but you just want to keep them talking because again, the healing is in them talking. Some people were just locked down and they don't want, some you might see just and then getting them talking, and then when the time comes to, you know, interject things like, yeah, what you have now is a new normal. I remember Butch Farnham, he was one of the senior chaplains with Orangeburg, and he had a dog, and I saw the dog for myself, and it was true. The dog had a traumatic experience. The dog had an ear infection, they didn't know it. And by the time they got the dog to the vet, well, the damage had been done. If the dog is still alive, the dog walks around with his head turned on the side like this. Now, that was his way of coping, and the world to him looks upright. He just looks strange to the world, but the world looks okay to him. He just now has a new normal, and so that's the crisis intervention, what you try to get people to the point of, and you don't want to bring about what they call second injury. The same chaplain said his wife was involved in a plane crash. Said what they did was they got him out of the water and all, they gave her an overcoat to put on. And that was pretty much their assessing her need and doing for her what they felt needed to be done. He said one day they're going to Columbia, but they're going across the dam. It was raining cats and dogs. And he said, he's just driving, you know, he's looking out at the water and all, you know, just amazed because he was in the Navy. And he said he looked, I guess the seatbelt thing came on. She had gotten out of the seatbelt, she was in the floorboard, just in a ball because the way everything had looked, because she never got good crisis intervention, she had a second injury. It set her right back in the same day. I went on a rape call one night, and one of the other chaplains, we met up at the hospital. I knew one of the things that you never do is, as a male, to touch a woman who, let's just say she's been raped. Well, I saw some other things in the situation, because the other chaplain up with, he was touching and talking to her. She ain't flinched one time, you know. But it wasn't my job to say whether something was or something wasn't, because sometimes a person's background, what they've been through, it's just another normal thing for them. But it was a traumatic experience for her, but it probably had been done so many times until it didn't faze her as it would somebody who this would have been something that happened to, because a male would have reached out and touched them, and they would have probably went in the shop. You know? And the things that she went through with them getting there from, because they had to take her from Orangeburg to Charleston. And so all of this time, you know, elapsed, but as chaplains, to be there to talk. And so in that regard, I believe that you ought to or should have chaplains that are male and female on staff, because in situations like that, I think it's best if a woman can go, you know, and talk with a woman. That's an opinionated statement, not fact. All right. Anybody else with anything further concerning open-ended questions? If you have any examples, or if you have a little story, or okay. Within a law enforcement context, would you say that crisis intervention is an extremely important mechanism?
I don't know if it's always the job of the captain, but it is important.
Were you all trained in crisis intervention? We were, yeah. But like I said, they always be challenged.
Yeah, but I think,
Somebody
yeah,
gotta get
it is important, but I think it involves that with who's intervening and who's helping. I don't think this should be on one person. I think that's coming from a lot of different directions.
It's just that a lot of time your chaplain will be your first and foremost direct interventionist, but like I said, it takes a whole village with this thing, because most times it's going to mean getting networking and getting other people involved. You know, and that's why I believe that it's something that needs to be operational in the church, because there's so much that goes on in the community. I took Pastor James with me one day, because he had, you know, he was a counselor, he was a trained counselor, and we were following up. The senior chaplain had gone down. That's when they used to have the alternative school in Cole. And so I was sent to do follow-up. And what had happened was a young man played Russian roulette and pulled the trigger, and the gun went off, and he was killed. So we went to talk with the students, and so we did it in mass, you know, with them in the classrooms. And man, some of the beliefs and thoughts that, you know, some of these kids have, and you can't put the blame on the pastor of the churches that they supposedly are members of. You really can't put the blame on the families, because the only blame you can put on the families is that they don't come to where they can get educated concerning certain things to help them with their belief system. And so a lot of these kids, there was nothing there, no faith or anything like that to hold on to, because, and of course, we went in kind of from the standpoint of just taking for granted that they were all Christian, but all may not have been. But we talked to them in a way that they wouldn't have been offended, but because we had it where they were doing most of the talking, telling us how they feel and how they felt, and why they felt the way that they felt. And but you could just hear, just oozing through, they had no faith system. And that's probably what's happening now, you know, with our young people in schools and stuff. When you look at certain things, you pull up Facebook, you look at things, the faith system. And I'm a believer that if your faith system is defunct, then, you know,
Right.
you get what you get. All right, anybody else? That was,
I would say it's important for long, but you gotta do what you're gonna run up. You know, I mean, that can be an everyday thing. You know, you don't know what kind of call you're gonna do. I mean, we had a trooper go up on, domestic, fighting in the car, you know, or whatever, or somebody trying to jump up the overpass on the interstate. Something like that. So you always gotta be, I mean, even though you're not professional,
But you gotta deal with it.
Right, you gotta be able to deal with it.
So when Lingard was killed, did they bring all of y'all in to talk with you, or?
What they do is they call it peer support.
Okay.
And they have like, they bring everybody in, and you don't come in uniform, you come in your personal clothes, and they come in there and they, just have a big open forum or whatever. They don't just do it for death, they do it for, if you have a bad wreck and some kids involved and something like that, they'll call and see if there's a peer support team people to come down there and talk to the guys. So, I mean, they do it for not just line of duty, but they do it for it.
I'm glad you said that, because in one of my papers, I wrote about how law enforcement officers many times see some of the most gruesome scenes that they can't turn it off.
Right.
And that, you know, you shut your eyes and that's what you see. You know, person been in an accident and the car caught on fire, and you looking at this person, and inside of them is red, orange, glowing, and skull and everything. Arm is cut off and it's laying over here, unburnt. But you know, so you can't turn all that. You know, you can't turn it off. And so a lot of times, you know, if the officer gets feeling macho and all, that he can handle it. You know, I don't know the facts of this, but the trooper that shot the guy in Colombia. Now you can probably, it was said that he had been involved in a shooting a little bit before, and I wonder if he had gotten the proper attention for that shooting, because I was telling people, and I was saying it without having full knowledge of everything, and I said, it seems to me he slipped through the crack because he was fearful. And so when this person went back, all he knew, now y'all correct me, and you carried and you shot, but to hear that gun go off without earmuffs on, oh, it'll make a believer out of you in some things. And no doubt with him being involved in a shooting prior to, and now the situation, and the guy is going back to the car, he went into survival mode. It's just that and this is just my belief, that he couldn't prove that his life was in danger because of what they were able to play back and see. But, you know, and it's a field that he'll tell you, if you're afraid, that's probably a field you ought not be in. All right. I need to shut up, I'm talking too much. That's what I have. In your opinion, should chaplains be trained as crisis interventionists, or should they just, because they are chaplain and we tag the religious side to it, he's supposed to know God and all of this, and he's supposed to be able, should he be trained as a crisis interventionist?
I think there should be some, at least to deal with it preemptively, but I wouldn't say full out training, because then you take away, he's a chaplain, okay? Maybe crisis intervention support. You don't want to, we talk about those special gifts early, we don't want to change his role. Okay, there are crisis interventions, and I'm sure it is the makeup of it, but yet you should have some foundational, I think, training, but I don't think you should have to go through what a certified, I guess, crisis intervention would have to go through.
What Orangeburg did, all of us, even the hospital chaplains, we had to do a 40-hour course. But it made us a part of a team. What's her name? Miss Chaplain, Teresa. She was a parish nurse. There were some community pastors, hospital chaplains. And so if, like I said, when I went to the school, that was part of what we were trained in doing with that. But if there would have been a plane crash at the big Orangeburg airport, we could have been slated to go there. It's been stated that those with the crisis intervention training do a whole lot better with like the school shootings and different things like this, because they go in with, as you said, the down and dirty. But yeah, I agree, not no long drawn out thing to where he just relegated to that, because that it's designed to put another tool in his hand,
Right.
yeah, to be able to deal. Now I'm back out and
I would say when, like, for us, we was told when we, like, the patrol, if somebody gets into a record, or if it's like a fatal rate, we do the death notification, we go to the house or whatever. So a lot of times, we would try to go find who that person, if it was somebody that was local, their pastor, or somebody like that, go with us, even though we were gonna do the death notification, somebody like a chaplain, somebody was with us, they can kind of be the crisis individual for us instead of us having to be the ones to do it. So that was one of the things that they said, if you can find the pastor, their pastor or something like a chaplain to go with you, that's, kind of how you want to approach that. So when it comes to that type of situation, I think they do need some type of crisis intervention training.
because back with the conference, because you're there for the law side of things, and to make this notification. And I found out that that's why you don't have PO boxes on license too, because you need to go to the right house. Yes. There have even been some horror stories about that with being next door and making wrong notification. But yeah, thank you for that. We were just on question 4. Should a chaplain who has been trained in crisis intervention be concerned about your faith, whether or not you believe in God? Why or why not? Should it be concerned?
No. That means I say no.
Why?
Because when we're talking about crisis intervention, we're talking about the intervening. Intervening. Doesn't matter whether you believe in God, whether you believe in whoever it is. Your job at that time is crisis intervention. Doesn't matter whether you believe in God or not. Is that going to help? And like I said, for how will you know if they believe in God? Without asking, unless they bring it up. Because as a chaplain,
I'm assuming they're good in that.
exactly. As a chaplain, you come in and you deal with a person. So I don't think that would. Well, if he was concerned about that, if you don't believe in God, I'm not going to help you.
Right, exactly.
Right.
So yeah, it shouldn't matter.
Because to be honest, I'm going to say, hey, if you start believing in God, things might change for you
Right,
right now.
now.
Yeah.
Meet them where they are.
Right. Yeah. That's it. Meet them where. Anyone else? And how we looking on? Okay. Who do you believe to be more needed in a crisis, a counselor or a chaplain trained in crisis intervention?
I'm gonna go with the counselor. Just simply because they probably are more qualified. They probably have more credentials. They probably will be more trained to deal with it, but didn't have the, chaplaincy trained people. I don't think the chaplain will have as much training as a certified counselor.
What was found out was some said the chaplain as the crisis interventionist because they're doing the down and dirty, but the counselor for the long term. Yeah, because the chaplain, he's going to, deal with it, and that's where the referral will come in to point them further over. But I think it's a situation where when something's going down, ain't no atheist in foxhole. Whoever's there, and you may find out in some of those situations, as the person I was alluding to earlier, he wasn't trained counselor or anything, but it's what the individual who was in this crisis saw in them. And so then those of us that are trained, we have to learn sometimes to kind of, it's like, I saw this movie, and the young lady, she had some training, but she established a rapport with the hospice taker, Straw. And so in that regard, the trained negotiator just stayed alongside her, and if she was going into an area, he'd tell, maybe back off that, but then that's why he let it ride, because a lot of times a lot of this stuff comes down to just raw instinct, and you might say, that's probably bad for me to say as a Christian and as a preacher, because we're not animal. It ain't raw instinct. In those sense, that might be one of those special qualities where the Holy Spirit maybe lead God and direct me.
And for us, like you were saying, just a tool in that name. When they came to the academy, they had 2 days, they had 16 hours of crisis intervention training. Now that didn't make them SME by any means, but it's for the immediate time. Like I said, the counselor's going to take care of us. And for us, it was always, let's talk about battle buddies, this, that, and the other. One of the things that we did when I was a drill sergeant, because you would have your battle buddy. Now you got to write about me, turn it in. Drill sergeant, I've got to write about you. And I just always say, I don't want to know about hip hop songs and dances. I need to know what's his blood type. Who's his next of kin, brothers, sisters, all of that stuff. So now when we start talking about crisis intervention and those people that were trained because they're the ones that are in that squad. So they know more about those people. They're going to be better at it, even though they're not subject matter experts. They have a little training, but what they know about this person is going to help them in that whole thing right now. Counselor will take over when we get back to the real, you take over, but right now, you need to be able to do it.
Yeah, kind of like a surgeon in the field. He's going to patch you up,
right here, yeah.
stop the bleeding. Yeah.
Send you to the specialist.
Yeah. I was probably looking over. All right, so final question. How much training would you deem to be necessary for a chaplain to be considered as well trained in crisis intervention?
I don't know if I could put a quantity on how much, but I would recommend that it would be ongoing. Like it's not a one-time thing, because,
What do we consider well trained?
yeah, I don't.
But see, I heard you say 16,
Yeah, we did.
and we had to do 40.
Yeah, we did 16 hours.
And yearly, go to the academy where they would have military chaplains, some retired, would come in and talk about certain things, I'll quote one exercise we did was, and it was trying to put you in a position to know or to have some empathy for people who may be on their deathbed. And I saw some grown folk in there crying, and I guess it was probably, I was probably one of those that, you know, something like that would get me, would have took the wind out of me, because I was trying to be serious with it, but it was kind of hard for me. But they said that you got like 3 hours to live, and who are you going to talk to out of your immediate family? You can only have one person in the room at a time. Who are you going to talk to first, and for how long? And who are you going to talk to last, and for how long? And I saw some meaning that just like broke down. They just think a little bit too real, but you know. So in a scenario like that, how would you, the person that you would talk to first, and for how long? You got 3 hours to live, and the person that you would talk to last.
I'm gonna talk to my children first,
There you go.
and I'm talking to my husband last.
And he's getting most of the time.
And he's getting, yeah, he's getting on his back.
That's good for keep staying out of divorce court. That's good. That's good.
But that's just where, cause you have to think about, without a long story, children are resilient, and as a mother, you know what they need to hear at that time and how to address it. But the person that you made a life with, and I think that's the person that needs most of your time, because I think that's, not that they're gonna feel most of the loss, but that's the person that you need to anchor and let them be okay. That's me personally.
And you know, now that I think about it, the only lady that was in the class was the one, I think, that was the chaplain that presented the exercise. The rest of us were men. So the color of having a lady in there would have probably brought something like that, the thing about it more sensitive, because, you know, I think them daddies was looking at them daughters, and I had to talk to my daughter, I guess, you know. So you wouldn't be able to lock down on a number of hours or whatnot, but you would say that ongoing training.
And I do want to interject this, because as a teacher, this is what, and I think you would hear this across the board. We all have a certain training, you know, as far as education, what we should have. But at some point in the cycling of your career, it becomes like, nobody wants to sit through cookie cutter professional development. At some point, you should be able to choose, because you know what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are. So I think as a chaplain in their profession, as they move through and they gain years, they know what they need, and give them the freedom to select certain trainings that they think would help them to do better in their capacity. Don't let it be the same thing for everybody all the time, because everybody's not the same.
Okay, all right. Well, again, we thank you for your time and all your consideration, for taking time out of your busy schedules to come and to assist me with this, to help me with this. And I'm going to solicit your prayers that I do well with this, that I can achieve or acquire what I'm looking for. So again, thank you.